So we're going to try to graph a cosecant of x. Now we know cosecant of x is related to our sine. We know it's 1 over sine of x. So I'm going to try to graph this by graphing a sine of x and then doing 1 over it and seeing what would happen. So we're going to graph a sine of x. If we graph a sine of x, it starts at 0, ends at 2 pi, goes through 0, the x-axis at pi, hits the highest at pi over 2, and the lowest at negative pi over 2. Sorry, 3 pi over 2. So my sine graph looks something like this. Has a period of 2 pi and an amplitude of 1. So if I look at this with my cosecant, cosecant is 1 over sine. So what would 1 over sine of pi be? Sine of pi would be 0, so 1 over 0 would be undefined. So if I'm looking at my cosecant graph, I'm going to say where it hits that x-axis, it is undefined. And we know what happens when we have a 0 on the bottom, 1 over 0. We did that when we were graphing rationals. We get a vertical asymptote. So 1 over sine of 2 pi is also 1 over 0. So also undefined, also a vertical asymptote. And 1 over sine of 0 is the same thing. So I have 3 vertical asymptotes here, which is good. That gives me my entire 2 pi span. So what happens here at sine of pi over 2? Well, sine of pi over 2 is 1. 1 over 1 is 1. So that cosecant is also going to have a point here. Same here. This would be negative 1. So 1 over negative 1 is negative 1. So those points stay. Okay, what about getting closer to this? Well, really, as I go 1 over something really close to 0, like 1 over 1/10 or 1 over 100th, I actually get a pretty high number. So as it gets really close to 0, I'm getting pretty high numbers. As it's getting closer to 1, I'm getting closer to 1. 1 over 2 is closer to 1. 1 over 2.5 would be other way. 1 over 1.5 would be closer to 1. 1 over 1.1 would be closer to 1. So I'm actually just getting a parabola, kind of, that comes down and meets my end of my sine graph. Same thing would happen here. I would get a parabola that comes down and meets the end of my sine graph. So when I'm graphing cosecant, I'm really just graphing my sine. Wherever it hits a 0, I'm putting in asymptotes, and then I'm drawing a graph to meet it. Has a period of 2 pi still. Doesn't have an amplitude because this is going to go all the way up to infinity, all the way down to negative infinity.